Arkansas's Governor Asa Hutchinson. He is joining me right now to discuss. Governor, thanks so much for the time.
It's really good to be with you today.
Thank you so much. So Paul Ryan, he's encouraged from what he sees in this congressional budget office. Are you encouraged?
Well, I was concerned before the CBO report came out, and I'm concerned about a cost shift to the states. And if you're looking at 20-some million that might be not covered based upon the CBO report, who's going to have to pick that up? It's either going to be individuals who are not covered. Perhaps that's because of their individual decision. But it also could be that they're going to have that emergency room care. And so I'm concerned about that cost shift to the state. Clearly, Speaker Ryan has a challenge ahead of him trying to keep the coalition together to get something passed, because what we have doesn't work. It needs to be repealed. I support that. But this certainly signals that there's more work to be done, and there needs to be some adjustments to relieve some of that cost shift to the states and to make sure that we don't go back to where we were before, which was that we just had our emergency room filled with those that did not have any coverage.
Well, and what the adjustments are, that's obviously the toughest thing right now. Your state, as I mentioned before, your state is taking advantage of the Medicaid expansion under Obamacare. And I recently heard you say that 330,000 people in your state, that's a lot of people in your state, are on that expansion. That obviously is to be sunset, and according to some conservatives, they want to end that Medicaid expansion even sooner. We're talking 2018. What would that mean for the people in your state?
Well, first of all, I'm not for ending it in 2018. I'm for repealing the Affordable Care Act now, and that's important to give us flexibility that we don't have to manage those numbers. The 330,000 is too high, and I've presented a proposal that I expect to be approved by the Trump administration that will allow us to have work requirements that will allow us to reduce those covered down to 100% of the federal poverty level and control those numbers and the cost of the state and the federal government. Whenever that happens, if you shift them, then where do they go? And those that are off the Medicaid expansion will right now get their subsidies on the exchange. Under the congressional plan, that's not going to be sufficient for them to have coverage. And that's where we have to start, is to make sure that, one, we're targeting the low income, the middle income individuals who want to go onto the marketplace to have the tax credits. The focus has to be on them and not the high income. Secondly, we want to make sure it's high enough so that they can have access to coverage. We recognize not everybody will choose that, but we want to be able to provide that opportunity, and that's a change that needs to be made.
So as that's being debated, if we look back in the not-so-distant past, you have a president who had said during the campaign, he said very clearly that he would not cut Medicaid. With this bill, then, as it stands right now, is he breaking a promise?
No, because under the bill, the Medicaid can continue. It's just that the states have to pick up a greater percent of it after 2020. And that's what I refer to as the cost shift to the states. Some states, including Arkansas, would have to look at it and say, can we afford that? And we could not afford that unless we had flexibility, which is to manage that. And so there's two things need to be happen. One is, let's change the tax credit to make sure there's more there for those who need to be covered. Secondly, give us the ability to control the numbers and the cost. Then we can manage the population, even though we might not get the same level of reimbursement. We need to have continued federal participation, flexibility of the states. So I don't think it is breaking a commitment. It's just a cost shift to the states that we're very concerned about.
And very concerned you should be. I mean, right now, President Trump does not have your support as this bill stands.
I do not support this bill as it stands. It's okay if it passes out of the House. We just have to remedy this in the Senate. This cannot be the end product. It can be a beginning of the process. It's got to change as it goes through to give some relief, to make sure that we're not going simply back to the old system, that we can have some stability in the marketplace, that we can have coverage that's needed, but also that we can bend that cost curve that will help the states and the federal government. There needs to be changes.
What those changes are, though, that's where the big divide is right now, Governor. You're on one side of it. It looks like right now Republican leaders and the president are on the other side. We'll see what happens as you work through it. Great to see you, Governor. Thanks so much.